I'm going to, in order to put into context what I'm going to say, I need to probably give a bit of background and a bit of the history of what's going on with COVID.
Perfect.
Okay.
Yeah, very timely. Okay. Yeah. What tier are we all in, by the way? What tier are you in, guys?
3.
Anyone else? Anyone in?
I'm representing the Southwest, so I'm going to say 2.
Right. Well, you could move to Cornwall and be in 1.
I'm not currently sat in the Southwest though, but I'm representing it.
I might be just popping down to Cornwall for a while. So,
I think a lot of people might be trying to do that.
Yeah.
It might be interesting.
Yeah. Anyway, good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to our State of the Nation webinar today, Friday, final Friday of the month, and it's become a tradition now for us to have this State of the Nation webinar at the last Friday of the month. So welcome to you all. We've got people just coming in all the time, so if you could give us a couple more minutes, that would be good. In the meantime, ladies and gents, those of you in the audience, if you'd use the chat box at the bottom of your screen just to tell us who you are, give us your name, your organisation, and also just tell us where you're from, because we now communicate these webinars all across the UK. So it's nice to know where the supporters are. We've got speakers today from the North East, from the Midlands, from Wales and the South West. So representatives from across the UK, let's see who you're supporting in the chat box today. We're expecting 40 odd people today, so still a few people to come. So just bear with us if you would, while we just wait for those to come in. When the chat box opens, it takes a little while. So that's good. We've got Janine from Esh Construction in Durham. Janine is the first one to give us a name. So hi to you, Janine. Also hi to Paul Slinger from Wright Hassel, based in the Midlands. Andrew Punchin is here from New College, Durham. So far it's North East 2, Midlands 1, Wales 0, Southwest 0. So no pressure, no competition. Someone coming in. We've got a goal from the Southwest. Welcome, Sunny in Taunton, it says here. That's Leaders Meets. You don't count.
I don't count.
No, you don't count. Another one, Northeast going ahead, Robin Beattie from Newcastle University. So hi to you. Look, I'm gonna make a start because it is about 3 minutes past. So officially, very good afternoon. On behalf of all of us, welcome to our monthly State of the Nation panel discussion. I'm Andrew Carpenter. I am Chief Executive of the Structural Timber Association and also Chief Executive of CE Southwest and the CE Midlands. We three organisations started these webinars back in March, but we've now been joined by a number of others. So my CE partners in the Northeast, in Wales, also nationally, and the CIOB have now joined us as hosts. So 6 of us now, or 7 of us now as hosts, bringing you these weekly webinars. We've been covering a lot of topics, mostly COVID related in the early days, but we've broadened it since then. And since September, we've been having these monthly State of the Nation panel discussions. So this is the 3rd. And what we do, we invite speakers from across the UK to join us to give us a bit of a heads up on how they see the UK construction industry, both from their geographic location, but also from their part of the supply chain. So representing the regions today, Dan Macey from the Southwest, we've got Robert Chapman from Wales, Keith Blizzard from the Midlands, and John Nielsen from the Northeast. And I have warned John that he is topping the bill, because with my theatrical background, anyone that comes on last is always the one that tops the bill. So there's no pressure, John, on you when you come to speak. Only joking, you know that. So the rules are, ladies and gents, if you've got any questions, would you please pop them in the Q&A box at the bottom of the screen, because we're keen, obviously, when the speakers have finished, that we have a good number of questions that I can pose to them. And again, keep putting your names and your organisations and so on in the chat box so that we know who you are and where you're from. One other thing, we have recently started doing a survey. which is very useful for us in terms of trying to judge what you find useful, what we could do better, what you enjoy, what you don't like so much, etc. So halfway through, when all the presentations are finished, we're going to put the survey on the screen, and we'd like you to start populating that while the Q&A is going on. Anyway, look, without further ado, I'm going to mute myself, you'll be pleased to know, and I'm going to hand over to start the ball rolling to Dan Macey, who's representing CE Southwest. Dan, over to you.
Yes, thank you, Andrew, and good afternoon, everybody. Myself, I'm just having a quick look through those people listed in the participants, and sadly, yeah, the Southwest seems to be a little bit lacking today. So so hopefully they'll join us later. But it's good to see sort of fresh new faces. Just to give you a bit of a background, so I've been in the construction industry now since the age of sort of 17. After a couple of years of working on site, I've actually joined the supply chain, moving into specialist merchants, and then into the product manufacturing. Only recently, probably times not as great to do so, but I set up Holistic Housing Solutions, having worked for a facade company for the previous 12 years. Holistic Housing is formed probably out of frustration more than anything, with visions, seeing great opportunities in the industry, but very little uptake in the world of modern method of construction. So I kind of made it my goal to take into the marketplace and see how we can put a little bit more injection into the use and uptake of modern methods of construction. So the vision I had when I set the business up, I actually set it up in 2017, but didn't really venture into it until March this year. So it was created to hence the name and the title, Holistic Housing, was to create a whole house approach using modern methods of construction. And this came from lots of conversations within CE Southwest on the availability of conventional products and the supply chain skills and labor resources. So it kind of takes a burden away from the traditional conventional builds, allowing new innovative technologies to come into the marketplace, still maintaining high-end quality builds. So that was one aspect of the business, which I'm now looking to engage that into a much deeper role for education, apprenticeships, and more long-term employment as part of that learning curve. I additionally progressed into the world of volumetric. And for those of you who obviously know the definitions of the modern methods of construction, it's one of the higher, the category 1 within Mark Farmer's report. And I've now partnered up with a volumetric provider, and we actually taking a different approach with specific select clients, looking at sort of exclusivity in a collaborative manner than it is trying to sell to everyone in the open market. So it allows that opportunity for standardization. I've also, my experience within the external wall insulated industry, have a retrofit aspect, but now looking at whole house approach as opposed to just single measures. And on top of that, there's also an element of client consultancy that I do for clients who are looking to engage and are looking to embrace in the market intelligence, and giving them that information really due to the potential lack of understanding within their own organizations. So it's just to look at sort of pre-planning opportunities of how these clients can engage with modern methods of construction. So the housing market, and the way I see it, and by all means, please fire the questions in thick and fast. If they're not questions, and because I don't know what sector of the organization you're from, they could be abuse, but I can take it all. It's not a problem at all. So apologies if I do offend anybody in certain sectors, but I intend not to. But the way I see it, it's a buoyant market in a way of sales. And I think statistics have stated that sales have been soaring of housing, albeit we still have lending issues, but that's a separate subject that we can look at. So the aid of the stamp duty holidays is basically aided that beyond certain forecasts. So people like Savills in Exeter most recently advised in September that they had a 92% higher transactions than the previous September of 2019. So it's astonishing really. And I suppose in the circumstances that we are in, you then potentially look at the reasons as to why these people are moving, and we'll probably put that down to the now new way of living and the extra space that's needed. So the house prices ultimately have gone up as well, and we don't see any sort of decline happening in that in the next sort of 18 months really. so the marketplace states. But completions and site starts are obviously down, and that due to the COVID circumstances. So I think we're obviously going to see the impacts of that a little bit later. National statistics, the figures really show it's a bit like a David Beckham penalty really in the Euro 2004. It's nowhere near the goal. We are far from where we need to achieve, and obviously now it's all about that revival of the industry and how we can achieve that together. So looking at how these things can aid, planning is a big topic at the moment, as I'm sure we'll all agree, and again I'll cover that a little bit briefly as I go. So the EU workers, we're starting to see a lot of losses, and I think the Southeast may back that up with best part of 50% losses in that part of the country. So what with that and the aging population of our industry, we've really got to reach out to the youth of what we have today in order to encourage them into the construction sector, because in certain circumstances it doesn't kind of have that sex appeal really for people to come and join. So it isn't just a muddy boot approach. There are a lot of opportunities within our industry. But one of the key things is I find, and Constructing Excellence ethos, the collaboration, and that's one of the big things that I've took from my participation in Constructing Excellence over the years, and collaboration is absolutely key. And I mean, one of the biggest things that's come out of COVID is TikTok, and yet there are certain reasons people will look at it, but people share so many things in a sort of collaborative way. It's all about sharing. And there are so many ideas from a construction aspect that you can learn how to do certain things and that you wouldn't think of doing before. So it's funny really how that form of social media was kind of probably derived for one thing, but actually it's very beneficial when it looks at sharing information, if you look at it in that. So we find there's a lot of people looking for relocation to the Southwest. And again, that could be the way of life, their work-life balance and the housing needs. So they're moving away from built-up areas now, coming into sort of more open spaces, just in case potentially for the future, lest, God forbid, we don't have another pandemic of this nature. So, but the Southwest, I think we're kind of almost spearheading the fight back against any form of recessions. We're doing extremely well, in my opinion, anyway, from the things of which I'm seeing. I don't appear to have had any sort of knowledge of any sort of significant losses through the COVID times, which is really good. And I know that the economical aspects will be for many months to come. But I hope to think that people have managed to survive the fall in this. The housing aspect, it stopped temporarily. But the other sectors, once we got sight after the first lockdown, we still continued, and we really started to build in our aspects of work, and we continued sort of business as usual, in want of a better way, but obviously with the provisions in place. So the demonstration of modern methods of construction, both Exeter and Plymouth, the Nightingale hospitals, they demonstrated how collaboration and how modern methods of construction, came together in order to create a much needed facility at the time of need. We have Hinkley Point that's thriving for employment, and the next phase is going to bring best part of 1,200 new employment opportunities along with 300 apprenticeships. So again, it's a huge, development in the Southwest that brings great economical benefits. We have housing developments like Sherford and like Cranbrook in Exeter and Plymouth. And we've also got other developments around places like Exminster, Clumpton and Millbay and Plymouth. So it's really thriving in our industry, to be quite honest with you. And it's really, really positive. I know a lot of people see a lot of negative in the world currently, but I think our sector is almost, the construction industry can be a huge catalyst for the actual economical revival. So I look forward to what the future has to offer. And I mean, the government obviously emphasises this. Build with Boris, the billions of pounds that have been invested for, the home building funds and affordable homes, the additional now in the recent budget of an additional 2.3 billion, which is fantastic. And then also the drive with Robert Jenrick basically stipulating a 20% usage of modern methods of construction in public monies. So it's really coming together on the collaborative fashion, and it's really sort of demonstrating it. I suppose you look at Building Better, it's a consortium of RPs that have come together and that are obviously looking at the collaboration partnership as well as modern methods of construction. So it's great. And that's actually crossing the boundaries between, you know, organisations in the Southwest and the Southeast. So yeah, I think we've remained static for a very long time. And it's now time to not go back to the normal, not go back to what we were doing, and for us to basically take that step change now. We've done it now, we're doing it here, we're doing it virtually. So there are things. The key question is who are the ostriches and who are the brave soldiers? People will put their head in the sand, but some will put their head above the parapet as well. So, you know, I totally agree with the concept. We do have to build better. Grenfell sadly demonstrated flaws that we have in our system.
Dan, I don't want to be rude, but I'm going to have to ask you to wrap up. I've been trying to be polite in the chat box.
Sorry, I'm in my motions. So yeah, I will wrap it up. But
I need to get the others on board.
No problem. So yeah, I will wrap it up. But as I said, we do need to build better. We do need to build greener, thinking about the future home standards, and we do need to build faster, but we need to have the quality in that. So yeah, I'm absolutely in agreement with that. And as I can say, I'm a modern method of construction advocate. So yeah, I'd love to see more of that. And I will.
Sorry about that, mate.
I will retract my seat, Andrew.
that was probably not a good move from my point, because Dan's the incoming chairman in the Southwest. So
don't you worry. It's noted.
Thank you, Dan. We'll bring you back in with the Q&A later. I'm going to move on now to Robert. Robert Chapman is representing Wales. If we could change the screens over, Howard, that would be good.
Okay.
Robert, all yours.
Okay. Good morning. Bore da pawb. Welcome, everyone. I'm going to attempt to be brief, but with clarity. I come at this at a slightly different angle, in a sense. As a member of Construction Excellence Wales, I'm a chartered surveyor. I act as a strategic advisor to businesses in an independent way, and I also have an interest in regeneration and economic development. In this brief talk, and I'm going to talk at pace, I want to talk about 4 things: specific projects, finance, leadership, and sustainability. Firstly, on the subject of specific projects, this has nothing to do with the fact that it's Friday today. This week apparently is UK Wind Week. Now, I attended a meeting earlier this week. It was the Virtual Energy Network Group meeting. And it was very interesting because the suggestion that was being talked about in that meeting is that Wales could be on the cusp of an offshore wind boom. And clearly something like that would be good for construction. And the chair talked about a quadrupling of offshore wind, circa 40 gigawatts. There was reference to the Everzone and Crown Estate report, which talked about the future opportunity for wind, offshore technology, floating wind technology, dare I say. And so it struck me that it was worth mentioning that, because that not only nods to renewables and climate change, but also an impact on the economy. The second thing I wanted to mention in terms of projects in Wales was what I would describe as a consortium win. And this is really down to zero energy, zero homes. And basically, the consortium won Welsh Government funding to retrofit 1,300 Welsh homes. And this struck me as being remarkable because let me just share with you some of the numbers. The collaboration, and Dan talked about collaboration, the collaboration of 68 partners, including 26 social housing providers and managed by Zero, has been awarded more than £7 million to deliver a pioneering programme, as well as decarbonising more than 1,370 Pathfinder homes. And I thought that was worth a mention in terms of its approach to the decarbonisation agenda and the opportunity for suppliers in the construction industry, etc. The third project I just want to mention, and these are random, there's no scientific approach to how I've chosen these, but I just wanted to touch on something that I became aware of this week. And it's entitled Introducing the Serious About Green Report. It's building a Welsh wood economy. And basically this was a piece of research which was commissioned by or for Wood Knowledge Wales, and it was delivered by the Foundational Economy Research Limited group based in Manchester. And this is really all about looking at the geography, the topography of Wales, and actually considering, wait a minute, is there an opportunity here to grow more woodland? Welsh wood substituting high carbon construction materials. Now, that might be something that's worthy of further discussion and debate. But an example, it wasn't given as a template, but an example was given in terms of area, where they've doubled the area that was growing trees. They've doubled that area since the 1970s, and 40% of that wood goes into construction. So I just thought that was interesting and was worth sharing with you. I'm going to move now on to the topic of finance, because frankly, construction relies on finance, doesn't it? It's pretty obvious. But there were a number of things here on the subject of finance that I think, or I thought, were worthy of mention. Of course, we've had the Rishi Sunak announcements, the infrastructure revolution, promising £100 million of capital expenditure on infrastructure in 2021. And it's interesting to note there that the government is targeting 12 gigawatts of wind and solar energy in the latest auction. So I just thought that was interesting. Part two of finance is the role of the finance sector. And there's a very interesting video that was put out by the Worldwide Fund. And this was actually about exploring the risks of inaction and the impact of investing as usual, and the role of finance and the finance sector that it can play in powering a sustainable future. And there are some heavyweight funds and investors in that video, and it just made me think about how things are changing around finance and the way in which finance is deployed. Point three, this was echoed, by the way, by Andrew Bailey, the governor of the Bank of England, who at the earlier this month, in fact, at the Corporation of London Green Horizon Summit, talked about the way in which finance needs to accommodate and address and deal with greater climate resilience. I thought that was interesting. And of course, this week, point four, on the back of all that's been going on, we had the 1 year anniversary of the Impact Investing Institute. And there was an address by Mark Carney, the former governor of the Bank of England. And so you're beginning to get a message here that finance and finance institutions and funds are changing their views about the way that they use their money vis-a-vis the climate change emergency that we are in. And finally, on finance, there was the subject of reflecting sustainability in valuation. And I listened to a debate on that. And yet again, this is all about valuation. It's about numbers, it's about money, it's about securing loans and finance. But where does that finance come from? And I think there is an increasing focus on how that addresses or deals with or takes account of climate change in terms of resilience. I want to move on to leadership. In terms of our different geographies and regional areas, we all need to be showing leadership. And I've seen that, to be fair, in Wales, in various guises. There is the Welsh Ministerial Construction Forum. There is the Built Environment Alliance Cymru. There is the Wales Construction Federation Alliance. And why do I mention these? I mention these simply because one needs to have a collaborative entity to address to government the importance of construction and the role that it plays in the economy and locality. Another item on leadership, I wanted to reference, again, this is a video produced by the incoming ICE President, Rachel Skinner, entitled Shaping Zero Towards Net Zero Carbon for Infrastructure. And it's worth a look if you have the time and the inclination. But yet again, this is someone, in my humble opinion, who's shown real leadership on a topic that is really, really important, all around understanding net zero, climate mitigation, and also climate adaptation. Two other items on leadership, if I may. First of all, the British Property Federation. And I listened to a debate this week talking about the importance of ESG, and those just seem to be coming more to the fore all the time. Okay, that's very much around governance, but it's about the economic, the social, and the governance, and how they are coming into play in terms of the management and performance of portfolios. And it was good again to see continued leadership, dare I say, by the Better Buildings Partnership, who this week launched the Neighbours energy rating scheme, which has, if you like, been adopted and taken across from Australia. And there were two aspects that were announced earlier this week. Neighbours energy ratings that rate existing buildings using in-use operational energy data over a 12-month period. And the second was designed for performance. And I think organisations will increasingly look to that accreditation as it beds in the UK. It's going to be administered by the BRE, the British Research Establishment. Finally, I'm going to move on briefly to sustainability. There's a sense in which I don't need to talk about the environment because we're in a climate change emergency. But there are two other pillars to sustainability. Putting the environment to one side, very important, but there's the economic and the social. And it was very interesting to pick up on a report that was issued at the end of June this year by the IED, the Institute of Economic Development. And this was a report entitled From the Ground Up, Improving the Delivery of Social Value in Construction. Now, they made 6 recommendations. I'm not going to dwell. It wasn't a particularly flattering report for the construction industry, but that was the end of June. It's interesting and perhaps coincidental that actually the construction industry, or the Construction Innovation Hub, has been working on and is in the process of delivering the value toolkit. And there's a series of workshops going on in that regard, which are looking at value definition, delivery model, procuring for value, and ongoing measurement. So clearly, the construction industry is waking up to the importance of delivering social value, something that's been around for a while in Wales, dare I say, since the early 2000s. There is, in fact, a social value portal, and actually in Wales, particularly with regard to the Wellbeing of Future Generations Wales Act, there is, in the process of being implemented, as I understand it, the National TOMS for Wales, which is a framework for providing a minimum reporting standard for measuring social value. TOMS, by the way, I didn't know what it meant, but it's themes, outcomes, and measures.
Richard, I'm sorry, I'm going to have to do the same as I did with Dan.
No, and so I'm going to conclude there finally on the economic by simply saying, yes, we need to have a thriving economy, but we need to think about growth and actually, what's the point of growth, infinity and beyond, if we're going to destroy the planet? So let's think about sustainable growth. Thank you,
Richard. Sorry to do that, but we do have 2 more presentations before some time for Q&A. On the subject of Q&A, folks, I've got one question in the Q&A box already, but please, the rest of you, think of your questions and get them across, and then we'll ask those of our presenters very shortly. But next, I'm delighted to introduce Keith Blizzard. Keith is representing the Midlands today, so if we could change the presentation's over. Keith, over to you.
Thank you, Andrew. Good afternoon, everybody. I've unmuted. Yes, I have. Right. I have to start by saying I'm unusual because in addition to being a director of Construction Excellence Midlands and a trustee of the CIOB, I'm a partner and head of the construction engineering team at Harrison Clark Rickaby's. What makes me unusual is I'm not a solicitor. I'm a primary professional. I'm a chartered quantity surveyor. I'm also a chartered construction manager and a chartered arbitrator. But I spend a good deal of my time obviously advising clients, but also sitting as adjudicator. So the comments I'm going to make are from that viewpoint, really, of seeing what problems people get into, what problems occur, how they get out of them, and also looking at from a point of view of a tribunal on the sort of disputes that come before me. I think it's also worth giving some background to COVID. So taking you back to March, we were advising clients who are developers, employers under building contracts, the main contractors, subcontractors, and obviously part of the supply chain as well, on what they should do, particularly whether they should close sites or not close sites, who should say that the site should be closed, whether it should be the employer under the building contract or the main contractor or the subcontractor, because there are different categories and different consequences depending on which contract you're under as to who consequences from whoever actually decided to close the site. And I think the construction industry actually generally came together rather well because people really didn't know and which way to go. And they didn't want to make a move that meant that they'd have serious consequences later. So what people did was, I think generally in the industry, they came to an agreement. Well, basically we don't know quite what's going to happen. So we'll agree to close the site, and generally employers said, well, okay, we'll give you more time, and contractors said, well, we won't charge you loss and expense. The consequence of that was that the predicted huge number of adjudications when we came out of lockdown didn't occur because there was no need, because people had agreed things. But what people didn't do was think of the consequences after. If you close a site down and then reopen it, you've got a set period of time that's easily definable. No work carried out during that period. But the problem you've got now is, having come back to work because of the ongoing social distancing, etc., and the rules by which people on site have to conduct themselves, it's slowed the work down. So the progress of the works once people came back has been slower. And that, I think, is going to be the source of disputes. And I think, well, I'm already seeing it as an adjudicator. And there's some really novel ideas and legal arguments being put before me as to why people should get loss and expense and extensions of time. The problem was the government advice kept changing. And I think that the most amusing one I had was a cladding contractor who had 18 abseilers hanging off a 34-story building. And he phoned me up one morning and said that only 4 of the 18 had turned up. And I said, would you know why the other 14 haven't? And he said, yes, apparently it's social distancing. Well, my immediate reaction was, if you're hanging off a 34-story building, who's going to come within 2 meters of you? I mean, you might get the odd suicide, I suppose, going by, but there again, you're not going to have the 15 minutes of contact. So I did ask him that, and he said, no, Keith, the problem is more that before they go over the top, they have to have all the safety harnesses put on, which is one person. The safety officer has to do the checking, and that's definitely within the 2 meter limit. The other one was, if you recall, when we were advising people as to close the sites or not close the sites, Nicola Sturgeon announced that all building sites should be closed. And then that meant that we ended up advising clients again, because some of them were very concerned. If we didn't close the site in England, could there be could they incur liabilities because sites have been closed in another country? To which we said, well, no, not really. But in fact, somebody advised Nicola Sturgeon what she'd said, and within, I think, 2 or 3 hours, she actually changed it. The government was very clear, but very quiet about it. They wanted construction sites to remain open. And in fact, the government now, with the current lockdown and all the tiering system, has been very clear. They want the construction industry back to work and carrying on. And in my experience, I think sites that did close were only closed for quite a short period of time, perhaps 1 week to 5 or 6 weeks, somewhere between the two extremes. And as I say, that was really, people did made agreements. So in terms of looking at, that gives you the context really. But now, if you look at the work that we've got, particularly with an emphasis on the Midlands, we have a huge number of projects, substantial projects. Obviously with HS2, that's now going out and they're trying to find the big main consortiums have got the work sorted out. And now they're looking for contract or subcontractors, the tier 2 and tier 3 contractors to come on board. In Birmingham, we've also got the Commonwealth Games. Looking wider across the Midlands, in the Black Country, you've got the Black Country Development Plan, which is out for consultation. You've got the Birmingham City Development Plan, which is looking to build, interestingly, actually, it's looking to build a green area around, I think, the Middle Ring Road, that sort of area. So there will be you should be able to walk round or go around the middle of Birmingham and continue this to be in green space. Residential is getting a lot of planning approvals at the moment. We've got a big tower block going up on Broad Street, for those of you know Birmingham, and that's by Moda, and that is actually, rather than build to sell, it's build to rent. And Moda have just got another big development, planning approval for a big development. I think it's a 39-storey building, just the other side of Great Charles Street from where I'm sitting at the moment. Office developments are certainly getting planning permission, but I think what people have got to do is look at, when it comes to the planning and also for residential, what are they actually going to build? Because with more people working from home now, and I think that will carry on post-COVID, which has two effects, the effects on offices and the effects on residential property. Because people who are working from home are going to want more space. So the tiny flats that are built at the moment, I think will have to be bigger, because people will want space. If they're working from home, they will want to have somewhere where they can put a table and a computer and actually have a working space. They may even want to have a separate room, take over, instead of a 1-bedroom flat, it'll be a 1-bedroom plus an office flat. So that's got to be taken into consideration. The other thing on the office front is, number one, how much office space will actually be required? Do we need to carry on building so much office space? And I think the other corollary to that, which is quite interesting, is office rents in London at the moment have dropped by 30%, and there are quite long rent-free periods when people take on leases. Looking further afield, going across the East Midlands, there's the first murmurings of HS2, the Part 2A, which is the links from going out towards Manchester and then going up towards Leeds. The other things that we've got to think about is there's still the COVID, the ongoing problems arising from COVID, and therefore the speed of construction. There's also what's going to be the effect of Brexit, because there's going to be an effect of Brexit on the 1st of January next year. How many workers are we going to bring in from EU countries? And I think that's going to be a problem. Are we going to have, looking forward, with so much work going on, we're going to be so busy, and the government is keen and has said so, to keep infrastructure funded. And that's a way governments have used the construction industry as an economic regulator, or tried to for decades, generations even. So I think the two big concerns now are we going to have enough qualified construction managers to actually build the buildings that are required? The number of buildings I don't think is going to be a problem. It's how we're going to build them, and are we going to have the tradesmen and the skilled operatives to carry on? I think that's my 10 minutes, Andrew.
Thank you very much. Sorry, Keith, I hadn't unmuted myself or put my camera on. Keith, thank you for that. Once again, folks, I only got 2 questions at the moment in the Q&A box at the moment. Please keep those questions coming as I introduce our 4th speaker from the Northeast. And as I explained to him when we were talking beforehand, with my theatrical background, that means, John, you're topping the bill, no pressure. John Nielsen, ladies and gentlemen, all yours, John. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Andrew. My biggest issue is that Katrina has told me not to swear during this talk, so I will try my best to adhere to what she's asked. I'm really going to talk mainly about what the North East is doing, how it's actually doing. To know a little bit about myself, I'm director at CK21, a civil engineering and structural engineering design consultancy. We started up in 2005, which we also do an awful lot of health and safety on the CDM side. For everyone just to know where we're at, we didn't furlough anybody, we didn't stop any of our taxes, we didn't get any of the government grants, and I have to say our workload and invoicing has stayed steady to rising now. COVID, whilst it's been very awkward in the aspect of working at home, it hasn't affected the business as greatly as many others have had. I'm also chair of CIC North East in the region, and was on the board of Constructing Excellence, and I'm on the board of the civil engineering degree, the Industrial Liaison Group at University of Northumbria, where we've just set up the apprenticeship degree. I think from what we feel, and chatting to the committee, and the committee in the North East includes contractors, Constructing Excellence, all sorts of players, is everybody felt cautiously optimistic over the past couple of months. I think that is actually starting to gel now into definite optimism. Workload is increasing quite dramatically. In fact, in some cases, I would say you could nearly say it's going ballistic. This has also come from CICA, the Civil Engineering Contractors Association, which is good to see. Infrastructure is a large part of it. Housing is a major part of it, which is huge. But there's an awful lot of commercial developments going on in all of the main cities in the North East. Hell of a lot of port work that's happening in relation to wind farms, and we definitely see the green agenda starting to not just filter through, but actually take hold. It's there, and it's happening, and it's going to move. On one of our jobs, we had a great quote from the client after we were talking about net zero carbon for the office project in South Shields, where the client just reminded the design team that what he was looking for was that it wasn't just something that they were wishing for. It was an obligation. We had to attain it. Now, that's the first time I've really fully heard that in the North East, and that's a great sign, because the one thing that I feel that COVID has given us is a chance to reset, and that's what seems to be occurring at this point in time. We seem to be resetting very well. One thing I think we have to understand, everybody, is that if it came to Grenfell, our industry looked absolutely rubbish, and still does, and has lots of things still to rag out from that, which is not going to be pleasant, and it's going to be hard for us. However, when it comes to COVID, we have actually been at the forefront, and we have had letters from government to industry indicating its thanks that we've actually kept everything going and kept working. Within the North East, I did know a few sites that shut down, but I knew an awful lot that didn't. The main reason they were shutting was getting the materials, etc., from the suppliers who had closed down, who then realized that afterwards that they could actually stay open. One of the things that we've done in the North East is we have completed a construction strategy called One Voice. And that has been on board and has been dealt with by everybody in the North East. North East is quite good in the fact that we can actually really speak to everybody quite easily. We're all compact in the one area. Can make us a little bit parochial, but therefore we've got to use that to our benefits, and this is one way we can do it. The One Voice strategy was actually released in March, April of this year. The work was done by Kate Lloyd at Constructing Excellence, who actually pulled together all the information and pulled together the document, and it's excellent. It's had lots of good responses back, and we have an action plan in which we are now moving on. The action plan covers mainly on the green agenda, but also skills. I think one of the things that we have to look at here is skills. I heard before one of the speakers mentioned what we're going to do with Brexit. Well, quite frankly, we've known that Brexit's been there for years. What the hell have we been doing as an industry in upskilling, reskilling, and actually getting in more people when I'm being told that unemployment could rise up to 2.5 million, and yet I have an industry that urgently needs staff at all sectors. We have to start looking at an aspect of reskilling within the sector. We also must make sure that we actually get a proper link into schools, which is one of the things that the One Voice document is trying to do, which is to collate everything that we're doing, to actually portray an industry that is worth coming into, that is going to be a mixture of the usual construction methods, but the modern forms of construction that were mentioned earlier by Dan, I think it was, are what's going to be coming to the fore for all new builds. We have to be upskilling and get ready for that. And that surely is quite exciting to youngsters in the fact that within this region where we have a big BIM leading from the BIM Academy to the BIM store, and those side of things, that is an area which seems to grab a lot of the younger generation. But we also have to understand that we do work outside. It's hard work. That's what it is. Our main issue, if I'm honest with everybody here, is that we're all talking and we're all white males, and something's wrong, and it's still wrong. And I cannot understand that over the past 10 years, about 10 years ago, I remember thinking, oh, we're finally starting to move on bringing more women into the industry, and yet it seems to have gone backwards. That has to be arrested. If we need to move forward as an industry, we have to face diversity properly and fully and face on. Groups like NARWIC, etc., the National Association of Women in Construction are vital in this. And in the Northeast, one of the things that we've done with Constructing Excellence is Constructing Excellence have put themselves forward and have set themselves up as maybe a central body to get all of the female bodies from the various organisations together to provide more of a one voice again in moving forward. As an industry, we'll die if we don't face this. And I would say that to any industry that isn't diverse. We have to get the diversity correct. As for the future, I think I'm very positive about it. We have some youngsters coming through. The apprenticeship degrees, the apprenticeship degree I've set up at the University of Northumbria, I think it's an excellent degree. New ways of doing it, new ways of actually thinking about it. Well, a day a week? No, not necessarily. Can they learn within the office? Yes, they can. Can they actually learn from people in the office? Of course they can. What happens if that office doesn't have the experience that is required to get through that degree? Well, how about all of you getting together, everybody who's got people on that, and maybe pooling your experience, which is what we're doing. And I think that sort of thing, which came from an initial aspect of up here, Plan B, which was a way of trying to get youngsters in to really look at construction as a whole, I think is definitely an excellent way forward. I don't think, well, to be honest, there's probably a lot more I could actually say about the region. It's a great region. I love my region. And it's a vibrant region. Commercial, industrial, housing, a lot of it is being built at the moment. Onwards and upwards, people. We have to be positive, and that's the main thing. Thank you.
Thank you, John, and thank you for not swearing.
Yeah, thank you.
And just to say on your point of diversity, I am grateful to Dan Macey for stepping in the Southwest. We actually did have a lady booked who went in for an operation and wasn't able to join us. So we take your point. We do try and have a diverse lineup, but it's not always possible. So what I'm going to do now, I'm going to ask Howard, if you would please, to bring all the speakers onto the screen. Before that, I mentioned earlier on about the survey. Howard, if you could just put the survey up so that people can see, and put the link, maybe, I think you already done the link, have you? Yes, you have, in the chat box. So while we ask the questions, if you could just be thinking about the feedback, that would be super. I've got a question which I'm going to put to Dan first, from Matthew Curtis, who says, what's your view, the announcement today about 600 mil tender for off-site volumetric housing, and also the entry of players like Brickcoin, who are looking to crowdfund development of affordable housing? Question, will traditional skills and site working methods be replaced by off-site manufacturing for new build housing, and will the funding model for housing development change? So Dan, would you like to pick that one up, please?
Yeah, sure, Andrew. I'll probably get the first three questions. I've got no problem with there, I think. In regards to the large tender, and actually that does refer to the Building Better that I referred to in my discussion. I'm in agreement with it because I think it shows great embracement of modern methods of construction. I think it shows true partnership and collaboration, which I think is fantastic within organizations. What I also think it's good is that it is sizable and that it does allow for that procurement element, and for offsite manufacturers to make that initial investment is a significant investment, and what they need is a pipeline. So I am in favor of it, but I'm not in favor of it as an independent, and that's the only approach. I think regionalized approaches are also critical. Obviously, the Northeast is heavily dominated with modular off-site manufacturing, and not so much in the Southwest, but I'm sure there will be, as years go by, there will be significant investments. So yeah, I am in favor of it to a degree, as I said, but not in an isolated favoritism.
As part of a mix, Dan, perhaps.
Part of a mix, absolutely. The Brickcoin, actually, I wasn't too familiar with that process, but looking at it, it's obviously it's a management of high quality, low cost social housing. It is there to deal with the undersupply. Now, there are obviously many reasons why there's an undersupply, and obviously planning is a probably whole topic of conversation of its own. But, you know, looking at the tenant allocation rights to the local authorities and the way in which they're doing it, again, I'm in favour for anything that's going to drive volume, high quality homes in our industry, because, you know, that brings economy, that brings employment, and it's all that circular process. So again, without looking at it in great depth and fully understanding it, the concept sounds favourable. And I'll pick up the traditional skills. I'll probably pass on the funding model, but the traditional skills and site working, my opinion is, yes, we're moving, this construction sector is moving to like an engineering sector, and a lot of people are looking that we are now working more and more in a factory environment. However, I think we have a skill shortage, and again, that probably answers James's comment, you know, it's all been about skills and shortages and things like that, and to bring Mark Farmer's approach. Now, I think we should complement, not compete. Is my sort of ethos in my business. So we should still be building the traditional homes, albeit we should be building them better. Therefore, we still need those skills. We then complement the numbers with modern methods of construction, which again goes with upskilling and reskilling, and potentially encouraging people who are suffering now in the hospitality sector, bringing them into our construction industry. But then I also think from a decarbonisation approach that skill set in new build homes will ultimately also transfer across to the homes of current housing stock that we have, which is part of the decarbonisation programme up to 2050. So I still believe there is a huge marketplace for every skill possible in our industry, both conventional and modern method.
Okay, thank you, Dan. I'm going to ask a question of Robert now, if I may, from Richard, who says, how can the construction industry support clients with zero carbon agenda when money is tight? Robert, what are your thoughts on that? We've got money tight. We're in the middle of coronavirus. How can the industry support clients with this zero carbon agenda?
It's an interesting question. How can clients support? I mean, I think that first of all, there's an element there of finance. And finance is, it seems to me, certainly over the last 18 to 24 months, is moving more towards greater sustainability and actually seeing that evidenced in construction and builds. And there's a greater acceptance. I talked about that in terms of ESG and the Better Buildings Partnership approach to the neighbours accreditation. So, I don't know whether implicitly in the question there was a suggestion of greater cost, because at the end of the day, it's about viability and it's about looking at cost and value. But value is coming more to the fore, it seems to me. I'm not a registered valuer, but I'm familiar with, Red Book valuation methodology. It seems to me that sustainability is coming more to the fore in terms of the credentials of what is constructed or procured or delivered by way of infrastructure. And that was referenced by the incoming president of the ICE.
So I think, Robert, you're absolutely right. The work that CE is doing at the moment with the value toolkit, where this procurement on value rather than lowest price is now being embedded throughout the supply chain from government down.
Correct.
Certainly the work CE is doing, we're working with each of the government offices, and we're rolling out toolkits across the region. So I think you're absolutely right. Maybe at last the idea of what constitute value will get through. Yeah,
I think the value has got to go beyond the pound note, and let's look at things holistically.
Okay, thank you. I've got a couple of comments. One from Andrew, who says, not many questions, but interesting topics. Sustainability, coping with COVID, Brexit. Good to see expert people thinking ahead. So there's a tick in the box to you guys from Andrew. Thank you to that. Also, I've had a request from James Evans. If we could please get Mark Farmer as a guest going forward. I'll try and do that for you folks next year. But the final question I'm going to ask, just to sort of equal things up, maybe to John and Keith, is restructuring more important than growth in macroeconomic context? Do you want to pick that one up, John and Keith?
That's a restructuring of what? A restructuring of the.
James doesn't say, but I'm assuming he means the restructuring of the sector.
I think the actual restructuring of the sector is vital, and that's happening at this point in time. It's responding to a dramatic situation, and to be honest, at this point in time, it's responded very well to a dramatic situation, and therefore has improved its ability to actually work with government, and government is actually looking back at us, which is a great thing. So the restructuring of it is occurring at this point in time. There's going to be lots of bumps in this, I think, for definite. But I think, to be honest, the main thing that comes out of this for me, Andrew, and what you mentioned before, is value. And that is the understanding of what value is. And the toolkit, along with the construction playbook, I think is now starting to set this into motion. We're starting to see people say, all right, we're not necessarily bothered about the lowest price. You think, sometimes I'm sure in the background there's bean counters saying, yes, we are, shut up, sort of thing. But I think they actually are. So I think that restructuring is the vital one, because that will get things moving ahead.
Okay. Keith, would you like to add anything, Keith?
Yes, because I think one thing that's come out of the 4 talks this morning is looking forward. People are generally expecting the industry to be very busy, and the government, that's what the government wants. Keep the construction industry busy at the moment, and there's going to be more work coming through with the infrastructure. So I think, to be honest, there's going to be growth within the industry, and in order to grow, you do need to restructure and reorganize. So both in terms of the way the industry works, but also within the companies within the industry, they're going to have to restructure to cope with more work. They're also going to have to restructure to cope with the number of workers, and going back to what I said earlier on, the number of people, number of tradesmen that are available, and also with the number of construction managers who can actually do the job. Just as a QS also on the cost versus value, the government has mentioned this cost versus value, go for value. They've been making that for a long time, but the trouble is the bean counters at the Treasury can tend to see cost and not value, because it's easy. And it also within local authorities and public sector work generally, I think they keep making this noise about cost versus value, but how do you actually measure the cost and explain it to somebody who can, whereas value is sorry, the cost is dead easy, but the value is much harder to prove.
Yeah, you're right, but there is a lot of work going on now from top to bottom on that. And as an optimist, I would say we've got a better opportunity now than ever to get that through. That's probably a good point to finish. It is now 1 o'clock. I am an optimist, as you probably know, and I think the way that the construction industry has performed during the pandemic has been exemplary. The way that we've come together under the Construction Leadership Council with the site operating procedures, with the roadmap to recovery, I think has really shown the construction industry up in a brilliant light. We've already been, as you've said, Keith, Boris and co has said, build, 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 build back better, build back quicker, build back greener. And we're the industry that is being set out to bring us out of this recession. So there's an opportunity there. And I think if we can place value at the heart of everything we do, then maybe what we've been trying to do since Egan and Latham in the mid-90s might come to pass. So I'm going to thank our speakers. Thank you to Dan. Thank you to Robert. Thank you to Keith, and thank you to John. Excellent contributions. And I think that's been obvious by the chit chat that we've had since, and the questions and so on. Thank you once again to my colleagues at Howard and John and Abraham at Leaders Meets for hosting it. And thank you, ladies and gentlemen, for your participation. If you would please just try and fill in this feedback form, it would be appreciated. Just to say that next Friday, there will be no webinar. The reason for that is that it's the Constructing Excellence Southwest and Constructing Excellence Midlands Awards. 12 o'clock next week will be the East Midlands Awards, 2 o'clock the West Midlands Awards, and 4 o'clock the Southwest Awards. So I'm going to be busy because I'm hosting each one, and I've got a 25-page script for each of them. So it's going to be a busy Friday afternoon for me next week. So nothing next week, but the week after, we're coming back with another hugely important topic, because we're going to be discussing the Building Safety Bill. We've had Grenfell, the Hackett Review, and now the Building Safety Bill. And of course, we've got the inquiry going on with some absolutely awful stuff coming out that's making us all embarrassed and squirm. So we've got 3 experts that are going to be talking to us on the 11th, 2 weeks today at 12 o'clock on the Building Safety Bill. But from me, it's just after 1 o'clock. I apologise for tripping over just by a couple of minutes. Can I just say thank you for coming? Hope you enjoyed the last hour, and I look forward to seeing you all in a fortnight's time. Thanks very much. Bye-bye now.